Hey guys, tonight we go deep beneath the surface of the earth, yes, but also of time itself. You're barefoot on smooth, damp stone. Every step echoes as you descend into a cave laced with sacred fungi, thick air, and the faint hum of something ancient. The torches flicker blue, not yellow, thanks to mineral salt sweating out of the limestone walls. Up ahead, a circle of priests chants in a low, syncopated rhythm that feels more like breathing than music. In the center of their ring, a girl no older than 13 sits cross-legged, veiled in obsidian dust. Her eyes are clouded, her mouth opens, and a prophecy begins. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is. Drop your city and local time in the comments, and let's see how global this bedtime crew really is. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wouldn't think a civilization known for advanced math, ball games, and pyramid building would also believe a blind teenage girl could speak for the gods. But here you are, sweating under a dripping cave roof as the oracle of Zybulba, the Maya underworld, tells of three red suns, the mouth of the world foaming with ash, and a metal bird whose shadow kills the trees. It's somewhere between beautiful poetry and an anxiety dream. You wake up from clutching your chest. The elders nod. Some weep. One priest carves glyphs furiously into bark paper, while another stirs something suspiciously smoky in a censer. You're pretty sure that's copal resin with crushed toad venom, which explains the spinning. This is the 8th century in what's now southern Mexico, and oracles like this one were less a novelty and more state necessity. The Maya elite depended on ritual visionaries to guide everything from crop cycles to war dates. And no, this wasn't a once-a-decade thing. They did this all the time. Want to pick the right day to crown a king? Ask the oracle. Need to know if your enemy's god is angrier than yours? Ask the oracle. Want to avoid being flayed alive for picking the wrong day to plant squash? You guessed it. Tonight's oracle, though, is different. She speaks of events far beyond the concern of any local ruler. Her prophecy, repeated in multiple city-states, weaves themes that feel unnervingly modern: falling stars that poison rivers, a sky that flashes and roars with divine fire, and a long silence between heartbeats that scholars now think may refer to a complete solar eclipse. Historians still argue whether she was a real girl or a later myth built to explain the collapse of the Maya classic period, which kicked off not long after. You know the drill. Cities abandoned, monuments unfinished, kings mysteriously unburied. Some blame drought, others cite class revolt. But the true believers? They say it all started with her words. And you can't deny how eerily specific parts of her prophecy are. One line goes, the children of the jaguar will forget the sky and wear numbers like masks, which could mean anything. Or it could mean astronauts, or barcodes, or TikTok filters if we're being petty. As the girl speaks, her voice grows deeper, not unnaturally so, but in the way that makes your arms prickle. Her final line freezes even the priest, and on the day the obsidian sun returns, the world shall end for the second time. That's when everyone starts chanting in unison. Loud, fast. The cave practically vibrates with it. You have no idea what an obsidian sun is supposed to be. But the Maya didn't use metaphors lightly. Every image in their cosmology has a parallel in nature. Jaguars represent night, toads speak for rain, and obsidian always symbolizes the underworld. So maybe the sun she saw isn't a star at all. Maybe it's a weapon, or a machine, or a dark mirror to the real one. An anti-sun. That line shows up centuries later, oddly enough, scratched into a temple wall in Palenque, but in a completely different dialect. Same phrase, same glyphs, different region. Either someone memorized that prophecy and carried it across the jungle on foot, or this oracle's words spread far wider than anyone dared admit. Mainstream historians accept that Maya prophecy had layers. Some were immediate, don't go to war tomorrow, others cyclical, every 52 years. Venus tries to kill us, and a few long-range, almost eschatological, one day the gods go offline permanently. This was probably the last kind, the one that gets repeated, corrupted, turned into folktales. And like all good doomsday predictions, it ends on just enough mystery to leave room for interpretation. Here's a quirky side note for your dreams tonight. Some modern Keshe Maya shamans still invoke her name. They call her Xkawil, and they believe she was an avatar of the lightning god who was struck blind from seeing too much truth. Others claim she became a sea-note spirit, appearing as a child in the reflections of moonlit water. Just don't look too long, they say, or she'll speak again, and you won't stop listening until your ears bleed. Sleep well. You wake, or rather, You come to in a different place entirely. It's still night, but this time, you're not underground. You're standing on the top tier of a stepped pyramid, barefoot again. The stone warm under your feet from the days. Heat still radiating outward. The jungle stretches in all directions. A dark velvet blanket stitched with scattered fires and silent temples. But your eyes are drawn upward because above you, something is happening. Venus. Bright. Impossible Venus. And she's moving wrong. To the Maya, Venus wasn't just a planet. She was a goddess, a warrior, a harbinger of blood and transformation. The Maya tracked her movements with a level of mathematical precision that would have made Renaissance astronomers weep with jealousy. They knew she disappeared from the sky for exactly 8 days, before reappearing as the morning star at rebirth. That always meant something big was coming. Something sharp, something that would bleed. You lie on the stone now, back flat, just like the ancient priests did when reading the sky. A soft breeze passes, thick with the scent of night blooming datura. Above you, the stars seemed to pulse. The Maya believed that everything up there was alive. Stars didn't just twinkle, they spoke. They warned. They remembered. This is where the second part of the oracle's prophecy makes itself known. When the red eye walks backwards, the rivers will turn black. And wouldn't you know it, Venus sometimes does appear to move backward across the sky. A trick of retrograde motion. But how did a blind girl in a cave know that? Historians still argue whether Maya astronomers shared their most complex findings with oracles and ritual speakers. Some say they were tightly guarded by the priestly class. Others believe the line between scientist and mystic was blurrier than we like to admit. In any case, the oracle's message aligns disturbingly well with the Venus cycle that began in 2023 and will complete in, you guessed it, 2032. Just enough time for the rivers to turn black. You see, the Maya didn't do linear prophecy. They worked in loop cycles nested within cycles. They had the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar used for ritual days, the Hop, a 365-day solar calendar, and the calendar round, a 52-year period where to sync up like cosmic gears. But the big one, the long count, is what gets everyone talking. That's the one that famously ended in 2012, causing a minor global panic and a major spike in New Age book sales. But here's the part no one mentions at dinner parties. The long count doesn't just end once. It resets, like clockwork. And according to some lesser-known stele carvings found in jungle ruins near Copan and Quirigua, the oracle's prophecy wasn't tied to 2012 at all. It was tied to Venus's cycle relative to the solar zenith, which happens roughly every 100 years. Next full overlap, 2086. Too bad most of us won't be around to see it. Or maybe that's the point. A fringe theory, whispered more than published, claims that the oracle's prophecy was actually a warning about cyclical global catastrophes, possibly even solar storms. One eccentric professor in the 1980s believed that the obsidian sun referred to a coronal mass ejection big enough to fry satellites and knock out power grids across continents. You can imagine how many grant applications that theory didn't win still. You can't shake the imagery, the idea of the sky itself betraying you, of light becoming weapon. And it makes you wonder, were the Maya watching sunspots? Could they have noticed something in the sky that wasn't meant to be seen? The ancient astronomers definitely noticed the blood moons. Lunar eclipses were a big deal. They called them Tzibkayan, or ink of the sky, and believed they were times when celestial scribes rewrote fate. If a blood moon aligned with a Venus reappearance, that was a cosmic red flag. And we've had exactly that pattern occur twice in the past decade. Twice. Remember that bit in the oracle's vision about the metal bird whose shadow kills the trees? It's a poetic image, sure, but oddly predictive. When planes first flew over the Amazon in the mid-20th century, some uncontacted tribes literally dropped to the ground in fear, convinced the gods had come back with weapons. And today, satellite views show vast stretches of forest still dying under contrails and carbon haze. Coincidence? Maybe. But you're lying here under the same sky the Maya studied, and it does feel like it's watching you back. And then you hear it, the conch shell blast. One long, mournful note from the base of the pyramid. A ritual starting. You rise to watch. Priests in jaguar pelts and gold-threaded skirts begin their chant. They trace Venus's path in red ochre across a giant bark map laid flat on the ground. A child with closed eyes walks its length. You blink. The child looks familiar. She shouldn't. But it's her again, the girl from the cave. Younger now, or maybe just lit differently. The same stillness, the same echo of knowing. She points straight up, and Venus disappears. The pyramid fades. The jungle vanishes. You're now ankle-deep in water, cool, still, and slightly metallic smelling. The moon casts silver light across the flooded floor of what looks like a half-collapsed chamber. You're indoors, technically, though it's hard to tell with vines threading through broken lintels and tree roots squeezing between stone blocks like curious snakes. This is a ruin, and in your hand is something that shouldn't exist. It's not heavy bark paper, never is, but it radiates a presence, like an object pulled forward from time instead of merely surviving it. The edges are crisp, preserved against logic by resin and ash, and the glyphs pulse faintly as your eyes adjust. This is the Codex Mirador, a document that most scholars claim is either a modern forgery or a brilliant prank from the 1800s. But as you flip the pages, you know better, because you've seen this before. The same symbols from the oracle's chant, the same jagged spiral sun, the same obsidian eye. The Maya only produced for known codices that survived the conquistadors and Catholic book burnings. 4. Every other recorded word of their vast mythological and scientific corpus went up in smoke, sometimes literally, at the orders of bishops who believed they were devils, lies written in stars. But occasionally, a rogue text emerges. One of these, the Codex Mirador, surfaced in the 1970s, sold quietly to a collector in Veracruz and dismissed by academics for one simple reason: it was too weird to be real. It shows glyphs never seen before, hybrid calendar math that overlaps the Hob with the Gregorian system, a drawing of a feathered serpent coiled around what looks suspiciously like a space shuttle. And yes, the same prophecy line for line from the oracle in the C-note, cave. But here's the kicker: it's written backward, not metaphorically, literally. Every glyph is a mirrored twin of its known form, like the whole document was meant to be read in reflection, or, more unsettlingly, by someone not from the side of the mirror at all. Historians still argue whether this codex could be an authentic post-classic Maya manuscript from the highlands or just a hoax cooked up to sell to gullible museums. But your fingers say otherwise. You feel the pressure points where the scribe paused, the embedded flecks of jade dust, the faint scent of copal that still lingers centuries later. This isn't modern dot, and it isn't meant for the living. The room. Urine seems to notice you're reading. Shadows shift. Somewhere behind the far wall, water begins to drip in a steady, deliberate rhythm. A heartbeat. You try to focus on the page. The codex speaks of a fifth ceiling, a cycle that begins not with destruction but with silence. No birds, no wind, no memory. Only then, it says, will the false stars open and sing the hunger of the sky. Could that mean satellites, radio transmissions, or something even more alien? There's a strange fringe theory, the kind that only exists in badly formatted PDFs and very late-night Reddit threads, that the Maya had contact with pre-human civilizations. Not aliens, not exactly, but echoes of a culture that understood time as a living organism. According to this theory, prophecies like the oracles were not predictions, but injections, time capsules sent ahead to test our readiness. Codex Mirador would be the final injection, the fail-safe. You turn the last page. There's no image, only a phrase in mirrored glyphs, one you now know by heart. When the obsidian sun returns, the world shall end for the second time. You hear a sound behind you, a splash, gentle, but very close. You freeze. Slowly, you turn your head. She's there again. The girl, kneeling in the water, eyes still clouded, head tilted. But something's changed. This time, she's watching you. You feel it, even without her sight. She lifts her hand and places one finger over her lips. Shhh. And the entire chamber exhales. Wind whooshes past as if released from the earth's lungs, blowing dust and spores in slow spirals. The roots above your head twitch. The codex goes limp in your hand, its glyphs fading rapidly like disappearing ink. You try to speak, but nothing comes out. Your voice has been borrowed. Maybe just for now. Maybe forever. She smiles softly, sadly. Then she dissolves. Not in a magical sparkle kind of way, no. Just like fog and sunlight. Like a memory someone tried to recall and failed. You're alone again. Except now, the codex is gone. Mainstream archaeologists might scoff at all this. They argue there's no verified record of the Codex Mirador in any national archive. That all we have are secondhand scans, privately held images, and conflicting descriptions. They point out discrepancies in ink chemistry, glyph stylization, and regional idioms. And they're right to a point. But they don't explain why multiple indigenous communities, separated by geography and dialect, still tell the same story. About the blind girl, the spiral sun, the second ending. A quirky little detail in one village near Lake Atitlan. Children are told not to whistle after sunset. Not because of ghosts or jaguars, but because it might wake the paper that breathes. You wonder what that means. You hope you don't find out. You're no longer in the jungle. You're sitting on a folding stool, sweat streaking down your spine despite the air-conditioned museum gallery around you. A group of tourists drifts past, their sneakers squeaking faintly on the marble floor. One points at a cracked limestone altar behind glass, reading from the placard in her best high school Spanish. Altar Q, Copan, 776 CE. Glyphs may reference astronomical events. You know better, because you've seen that glyph before. The obsidian spiral. And now it's etched in stone right here, in Washington, D.C. a long way from the cave where the oracle first whispered it. This is where things start to bleed through. The haunting isn't dramatic or loud. It's subtle, but it's persistent. And it's not just following you. It's been chasing anyone who's tried to dismiss it. Take Alonso de Estrada, one of Hernan Cortes' lieutenants. In 1524, he led a punitive expedition deep into the Guatemalan highlands. He mocked Maya rituals, stomped on their idols, and allegedly tore a prophecy scroll in half over his knee. 2 weeks later, he fell into a sea note and drowned. His body was never recovered, but his sword was found balanced across a stone altar, with the spiral sun carved beneath it. Coincidence? Probably. But that's just one. Fast forward to the 19th century. A British explorer, Charles Etienne Branscombe, discovered what he called the Venus Hole in northern Belize's sea note aligned perfectly with the rising of the morning star on key calendar dates. He wrote in his journal that he'd found the mouth from which the sky first sang, a phrase suspiciously similar to the oracle's own. He vanished 2 days later. His guide swore he simply walked into the water at dawn and never came back. The only thing left was his notebook, soaked but legible, and a drawing of a girl with blank eyes. Historians still argue whether these stories are just colonial folklore, with a splash of jungle drama, but the pattern persists. Every few decades, someone rediscovers the oracle's prophecy. A linguist, a cult leader, a fringe physicist obsessed with time dilation. Each finds something new and each either disappears or publicly recants. After one too many coincidences. One of the most famous cases was Dr. Lilia Gomez Ortiz, a Maya epigrapher who claimed to have decoded the mirrored glyphs of the so-called Codex Mirador. In 1993, she published exactly one paper before withdrawing from academia entirely, stating only that some glyphs are not meant for human mouths. Her assistant later reported that Gomez Ortiz began muttering in Cholti at night. Though she had never studied the dialect. To this day, she lives in a remote cabin in the Yucatan, refusing interviews. Her front door bears a chalk spiral, refreshed monthly. Modern skeptics have tried to rationalize all of it. Of course, bad luck, tropical diseases, unstable caves, old paper oxidizing under UV light. And yet, things keep happening. In 2017, a satellite used to monitor deforestation over Maya ruins began to malfunction. When flying over a particular quadrant near Tikal, engineers later found the onboard systems had logged a bizarre data burst and encoded message in binary that, when graphed, looked eerily like the obsidian spiral. NASA buried the report, but the contractor who leaked it, he drowned in his bathtub. No spiral glyph there. Sure, but the water was black with ink. No one could explain it. You blink. You're no longer in the museum. Now, you're in a hotel room in Belize City. The fan clicks rhythmically overhead. You stare into the bathroom mirror, and something about your reflection is just slightly off. Your pupils seem wider than they should be, to dark, to deep, like sea notes, like voids. You blink again and it's gone, but not forgotten. You scroll through your phone, looking at screenshots of glyphs. You play back audio recordings from earlier in the day, jungle insects, birds, your own breathing. And then a voice, not yours, soft, familiar. A girl's. She's reciting the prophecy, line by line. You didn't hear her at the time. You don't remember recording this, and her voice, as always, ends with, "The obsidian sun returns. The world shall end for the second time." By now, you've noticed the numbers. Sevens everywhere. Dates repeating. The same number of steps up the pyramids. The same planetary alignment cycling back every 100 for years. The Maya weren't guessing. They weren't warning. They were tracking. One fringe historian, you won't find him on Wikipedia, claims the prophecy doesn't predict destruction, but a test. The second end of the world isn't fire. He said in a lecture you had to dig out of a now-defunct video site. It's forgetting. Oblivion disguised as comfort. The spiral closes when we stop paying attention. You look around the hotel room. Nothing ominous here. Just a bed, a fan, a minibar. But there's a spiral drawn in dust on the mirror. Not your finger. And it's still warm. You're back in the jungle, but not in the past. This is now. A drone hums above your head as you duck beneath low-hanging vines. You swat at mosquitoes. Check your GPS and glance down at the coordinates glowing on your satellite phone. You're here. Somewhere in this dense tangle of ceiba trees and strangler figs is the final site. The one they won't map, the one even local guides avoid. They call it Yax'lajun, or 13 Echoes. Not a proper ruin, not even a city, just a stone circle half swallowed by earth, carved with warnings, the oracle's last whisper. Some believe is hidden here, etched into the face of a monolith that only reveals itself on one date. And that date is tomorrow. You set up camp nearby. Still skeptical, but a little twitchy. You've already seen too much. The codex that vanish, the recordings that shouldn't exist. The girl who appears in dreams, and then in mirrors. Even the animals are quiet tonight. No frogs. No howler monkeys. Just that low wind that doesn't quite match the motion of the leaves. Still, you can't help yourself. You scan the trees again, because you're starting to think she's watching. Historians still argue whether Yax'lajun was ceremonial or astronomical in purpose. Its stone markers don't align with solstices or equinoxes, but they do align with rare planetary conjunctions, specifically Venus, Mars, and Mercury appearing in a tight triangle. That formation occurs next in surprise 23 to dot the same year the oracle's prophecy ends. You sleep lightly that night, twitching awake at every rustle. And when dawn bleeds orange through the leaves, you find the clearing just as you were told. The sunlight cuts through a notch in the forest canopy and strikes a single slab of obsidian, now warm and gleaming. On its face, new glyphs. Ones that weren't there yesterday. Maybe they were hidden by shadow. Maybe they were hidden by time, and they're in mirrored script. You touch the surface and feel it vibrate faint, like a heartbeat. One glyph stands out, the spiral sun. Below it, the same phrase, the obsidian sun returns, but this time, the sentence continues. You tilt your head, translating slowly, your mouth moving before you even realize it, and if the world remembers itself, it may begin again. You step back. This wasn't a death sentence. Not exactly. It was a choice. The Maya didn't just see time as something to measure. They saw it as something you could steer, nudge, redirect. The prophecy isn't about destruction. It's about thresholds. Moments when we're asked, collectively, if we're paying attention. Because if you're not watching the sky, who is? A quirky little detail, one group of modern cliché spiritualists believes the obsidian sun is metaphorical, not a planet, or an eclipse, or a bomb but a generation. One born blind to history but still dreaming in glyphs. They say, the spiral sun is etched into every child's soul, waiting to be awakened. You walk out of the clearing and the monolith fades behind you, not vanishing, exactly, but slipping back into forest shadow, like it was never meant to be a monument, just a mirror. And maybe that's what this haunting has always been. Not a ghost, a reflection. You're back in your room now. Your fan hums softly in the corner. The screen's glow has dimmed, and the spiral you imagined is now just the shadow of your glass on the table. Everything feels slower, quieter. The jungle is far away, but maybe not so far. Your breathing matches the rhythm of the trees. The cadence of ancient chants still echo faintly somewhere in your chest, low, steady. Like a pulse wrapped in smoke, you feel grounded. Not alarmed, not afraid, just aware. The oracle, wherever she was from, whether she lived, or was conjured, or stitched together from centuries of stories, has said her piece. She's walked beside you through temples, through stars, through static and silence. But now, she recedes, her voice softens, and her image fades back into the pages of whatever story she escaped from. She won't visit again tonight. You're safe. There will always be mysteries beneath our feet and above our heads. Always echoes waiting in corners we haven't looked into yet. But for now, you've seen enough. Your eyes are heavy. Your thoughts slow like syrup. The spiral closes for the night, gently, quietly. Just remember, if the world ever forgets itself completely, it might not wake up again, but you will. You always do. So breathe in. Let it out. Feel the pull of your blanket. Let the shadows settle where they belong, and drift.